The Steelers are right in the middle of one of the most delicate and revealing moments this franchise has faced in years, because the next head coach still hasn't been hired, and every move, every interview, and every name connected to this search is telling us exactly how the organization is thinking about its future. The process is no longer theoretical. It is active, it is narrowing, and it is exposing a philosophical divide that fans can feel in real time. The Steelers have already brought in Mike McCarthy and Brian Flores for in-person interviews. Anthony Weaver is set to receive a second interview in person after first speaking virtually. Cs Shula and Nate Shellhouse remain names to monitor, with the expectation that one or both could receive in-person interviews once scheduling allows. The fact that the search has stretched this long without a decision is not accidental. Pittsburgh is clearly weighing stability versus evolution, familiarity versus modernization, and short-term certainty versus long-term upside. What stands out immediately is the sheer variety of profiles still in play. Mike McCarthy represents the most traditional option. He is experienced, he has won at the highest level, and he offers a sense of predictability that some inside the building may find comforting, especially given the current uncertainty at quarterback. At the same time, that same experience raises concerns about whether this would truly be a step forward stylistically. The idea behind a McCarthy hire would be rooted in a win-now approach, built around structure, familiarity, and a belief that the roster is closer to contention than a rebuild. That logic exists, but it also comes with the fear that Pittsburgh would be missing a rare opportunity to modernize the organization after such a long, stable coaching era. On the other end of the spectrum are candidates like Nate Shellhouse, whose appeal is tied almost entirely to offensive innovation and future projection. Shellhouse has never called plays at the NFL level and has never led an NFL locker room, which makes him both intriguing and risky. The upside is obvious. If the Steelers truly believe they are looking at a future offensive architect in the mold of the league's best young minds, passing on that could haunt them. The downside is just as real. Moving directly from Mike Tomlin to an extremely young, unproven head coach would represent a massive cultural shift. The organization would need to be completely convinced that Shellhouse is not just smart, but capable of commanding respect in a veteran locker room and managing the full scope of a head coaching role. Anthony Weaver has quietly positioned himself as one of the most fascinating names in this entire process. He is the only candidate so far to receive both a virtual interview and a second in-person interview. And that alone matters. Weaver brings a very different type of appeal. His defensive background, his work with modern schemes in Miami, and his reputation as a powerful leader all align with what the Steelers have historically valued. He is viewed less as a schematic wizard and more as a CEO-style head coach, someone whose presence sets the tone for the entire building. Players have spoken highly of his leadership, comparing his energy and command to coaches who inspire total BN. That matters in Pittsburgh, where culture has never been treated as an afterthought. Weaver's ability to connect, motivate, and unify could be the deciding factor if the front office believes the next era requires emotional authority as much as tactical intelligence. Then there is Cs Shula, who many around the league see as the favorite in the clubhouse. His resume is undeniably strong. He has coached at multiple levels of the defense and has been a key part of the Rams organization since Sean McVay's arrival. As defensive coordinator, he inherited a unit that lost cornerstone stars and still managed to develop young, late-round talent into legitimate contributors. That ability to teach and maximize players is something the Steelers deeply respect. Shula also carries indirect access to one of the league's most influential offensive coaching trees, something that could shape the entire staff he builds. The concern, however, is not about intelligence or preparation. It is about presence. Some question whether Shula has the same commanding aura associated with past Steelers head coaches, and whether that matters in today's NFL is something the organization must decide internally. Layered on top of all of this is the reality that the Steelers are still reviewing additional names behind the scenes. Reports indicate the team is not rushing and is continuing to evaluate whether other candidates should be added before a final decision is made. That suggests the front office understands the weight of this hire and is unwilling to shortcut the process. This is not about filling a vacancy quickly. This is about setting a direction for the next decade. Every interview is a test, not just of football knowledge, but of vision, leadership, adaptability, and alignment with what Pittsburgh believes it should be. What makes this moment so compelling is that there is no obvious answer. Each candidate represents a different future. One leans on experience and familiarity, another bets on innovation and youth, another emphasizes leadership and cultural continuity, another offers development and organizational structure. The Steelers are not choosing between good and bad options. They are choosing between philosophies, and that decision will ripple through every part of the roster, the coaching staff, and the identity of the team moving forward. The reality is that this decision will not be judged on the day the hire is announced, but on how the Steelers look 2, 3, and 5 years down the road. That's why the internal debate inside the building matters so much. This isn't just about picking the best resume or the most popular name among fans. It's about identifying who can carry the weight of this job in a city where expectations never soften. The Steelers are coming off an era defined by consistency, leadership, and stability. And whoever steps into this role will immediately be measured against that standard, whether it's fair or not. What's clear from the process so far is that Pittsburgh is not panicking. They are methodically working through each candidate, testing how they think, how they communicate, and how they would shape the organization beyond X's and O's. The second interview for Anthony Weaver signals real interest, not courtesy. The continued patience around Cs Shula and Nate Shellhouse suggests the team is willing to wait for the right timing, rather than rush a decision. Even the inclusion of Mike McCarthy early in the process shows that the Steelers are exploring every possible path before narrowing the field. Another important layer here is how this hire connects to the roster itself. The Steelers are not in a clean rebuild, but they are not a finished product either. There are real questions at quarterback, wide receiver depth, and along parts of the offensive line, while the defense still carries cornerstone talent that expects to compete now. That creates tension. A coach focused entirely on long-term development might clash with veterans who want immediate results. A coach focused only on short-term wins might limit the organization's ability to evolve offensively and schematically. Balancing those competing timelines is arguably the most important challenge facing the next head coach. Leadership, more than scheme, continues to echo through everything connected to this search. That's why names like Weaver and Flores resonate so strongly. Pittsburgh has always believed that when adversity hits, culture keeps a team together. That belief hasn't changed. Even as the league becomes more offense-driven and analytically focused, the Steelers still prioritize presence, accountability, and connection. The next head coach must command respect the moment he walks into the locker room, but he must also adapt to a modern NFL where players expect collaboration, clarity, and trust. At the same time, the organization knows it cannot ignore innovation. The league has moved quickly, especially on offense, and falling behind schematically is no longer survivable. That's why offensive-minded candidates and McVaytree connections remain so attractive. Pittsburgh wants structure, but it also wants answers. The wrong hire here doesn't just slow progress, it risks locking the team into another cycle of playing catch-up while the rest of the conference pushes forward. This is why the final decision will likely feel polarizing no matter who is chosen. Every option comes with strengths and legitimate concerns. What matters most is that the Steelers fully commit to the vision of the coach they hire. Half measures will not work. If they choose youth and innovation, they must protect and support that coach through growing pains. If they choose experience and stability, they must accept the limitations that come with it. If they choose leadership and culture, they must surround that coach with elite coordinators who can carry the schematic load. This moment will define the next era of Steelers football. The hire will signal what the franchise values most right now and how it plans to compete in a rapidly changing NFL. Steelers Nation will debate it, question it, and dissect it endlessly. And that's exactly how it should be. This decision matters. What keeps coming back into focus is that this search is not being driven by noise from the outside. It's being driven by how the Steelers see themselves internally. And that's why patience has defined every step. This organization understands that once this hire is made, there is no quiet transition period. The new head coach will inherit immediate expectations, national scrutiny, and a locker room full of veterans who are watching closely to see what direction the franchise is truly taking. That reality makes the interview process itself just as important as the final choice. One thing the file makes unmistakably clear is that the Steelers are prioritizing how candidates think about leadership under pressure. The conversations are not just about playbooks or schemes, they're about command, adaptability, and how a coach responds when things go wrong. That's why comparisons to figures like Mike Tomlin and even Dan Campbell keep surfacing. Pittsburgh knows from its own history that tactical brilliance alone does not sustain a locker room through adversity. The next head coach must be able to stand in front of players after a loss, absorb criticism from the outside, and still keep everyone aligned when momentum turns negative.
There's also an underlying awareness that the AFC North is not getting any easier. Rival teams are making aggressive moves, coaching staffs are becoming more specialized, and the margin for error continues to shrink. Whoever takes this job will immediately be tasked with competing not just on Sundays, but structurally, year after year. That's where the importance of staff building becomes critical. The Steelers cannot afford a head coach who struggles to assemble or retain a strong coaching group. That concern hangs especially heavy over candidates coming from either extreme, whether it's a young coach with limited connections or a veteran coach whose network may no longer reflect where the league is headed. Another subtle but important theme is credibility. Several players on this roster have already played for elite coaches and elite systems. They will know quickly whether the new voice in the building is authentic or forced. That's why personality, presence, and clarity matter so much. The Steelers are not looking for someone to replicate the past, but they are looking for someone who understands the responsibility of leading one of the league's most tradition-rich franchises. That balance between honoring the standard and redefining it is at the heart of this decision. The longer this process continues, the clearer it becomes that there is no panic, no desperation, and no shortcut being taken. The Steelers are willing to wait because they believe getting this wrong would set the organization back far more than getting it right would push them forward. Every interview is another filter, another stress test, another chance to see who truly understands what this job demands beyond the surface level. When the announcement finally comes, it will not just be the introduction of a new head coach. It will be a statement about what the Pittsburgh Steelers believe wins in today's NFL and what they are willing to invest in to get there. That's why this moment matters so much, and that's why the debate around it isn't going away anytime soon. There's one last layer to this story that can't be ignored, because it explains why the Steelers are being so deliberate and why this hire feels heavier than any other coaching decision in recent memory. This franchise is not just choosing a head coach, it is choosing how it wants to be perceived in the next phase of the NFL. For years, Pittsburgh was seen as the gold standard of stability. That reputation was earned, but it also came with a cost. As the league evolved, the Steelers often felt like they were reacting instead of dictating. This hire is their chance to change that narrative, or to reinforce it. The file makes it clear that the front office understands this moment is about alignment. Alignment between ownership, the general manager, the coaching staff, and the locker room. A mismatch in any one of those areas can quietly undermine everything else. That's why leadership traits keep rising to the top of the evaluation process. A coach who can unify different timelines, personalities, and expectations is more valuable than one who simply brings a trendy scheme. The Steelers know that schemes change. Leaders shape eras. There's also an emotional undercurrent running through this transition. Players, former players, and fans are still processing the end of a long chapter. That doesn't mean nostalgia should drive the decision, but it does mean the next coach must understand the emotional fabric of the building. The Steelers don't need a figurehead. They need someone who can connect past, present, and future without being trapped by any one of them. What ultimately stands out is that no matter which name is called, the Steelers are signaling that they want conviction. They want a coach who believes in his vision strongly enough to defend it in front of ownership, players, and the city. They want someone who understands that this job is not about personal branding or short-term praise, but about stewardship. That's a rare responsibility in today's NFL, and it's one Pittsburgh still takes seriously. This is why the waiting matters. This is why the interviews matter. And this is why the final decision will tell us more than any press conference ever could. The Steelers are choosing who they want to be next, and they know the margin for error is thin. What has quietly become impossible to ignore is how this decision will influence everything that follows, not just on the field, but structurally across the organization. The next head coach will have a major voice in roster construction, staff philosophy, and even how aggressively the Steelers approach change. This is not a cosmetic hire. It is foundational. That's why the front office is treating this like a long-term investment rather than a quick fix. They are asking themselves not only who can coach this team, but who can guide it through inevitable transitions that are still ahead. There's a strong sense that the Steelers are trying to avoid repeating mistakes that other franchises have made when moving on from long-tenured head coaches. Too often, teams either overcorrect by chasing trends or cling too tightly to the past out of fear. Pittsburgh is attempting to thread the needle between those extremes. They want evolution without chaos. They want modern thinking without abandoning identity. That balance is difficult, and it explains why this search has not followed a predictable timeline. Another factor hovering over this process is trust. Trust from ownership that the head coach can represent the franchise properly. Trust from players that the message is consistent and honest. Trust from fans that the direction makes sense, even if results don't come immediately. That trust is built long before the first kickoff. It starts in interviews, in how candidates explain their vision, how they handle tough questions, and how clearly they understand what Pittsburgh expects from its leaders. The Steelers are also keenly aware that the league is watching. This hire will be interpreted by other coaches, players, and executives as a signal of what Pittsburgh values. It will affect future staff hires, free agent perceptions, and even how young coaches view the organization as a potential destination. In that sense, the decision extends far beyond one individual. It shapes how the Steelers are positioned within the broader NFL ecosystem. What makes this moment so tense is that there is no safe choice. Every path carries risk. Choosing experience risks stagnation. Choosing youth risks instability. Choosing leadership first risks falling behind schematically if the staff isn't right. But doing nothing, or choosing without conviction, is the biggest